Hi everyone, welcome to episode 91 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I talk to renowned singer-songwriter Tim Finn about the Ghost of Santiago, the second collaboration album with legendary guitarist and producer Phil Manzanera. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Anton Newcomb of the Brand Jonestown Massacre about the band's brand new album, Fire Doesn't Grow on Trees.
Okay, so I work 6 days a week at music, but it's split into two things. I make music just for the hell of making music. For me, it's almost like a church or a spiritual experience, a meditation, whatever you want to call it. And it's infinitely fascinating because there's no rules and there's so many building blocks, right? In that sense, any sound can inspire me when I sit at the drum kit because I play every instrument. So if I sit at the drum kit, I can just go, whoa, this is cool, and start a song that way. Or I can pick up a recorder or a flute or playing my organs or bass lines. It could be anything that I know. Another way that I write, I'm walking down the street often. It's whenever you're moving and you're otherwise occupied. Like when you're at a job and you start humming a tune. Like once you got it under control, it's like all those thoughts you had, you can like solve all these problems in your head. Your body's just like, there's a whole another layer that your brain operates on. So there's this that way where it's like this strike of lightning, and I hear this song in my head. I'm like, who the hell is that? And I'm like, it's me. I better run quick and figure out how to play this because I have to teach myself how the parts go. And then there's another way that's like, so that first way where I'm just experimenting, it's anything goes stylistically, whatever. So I could do disco 1 minute, country the next minute, heavy distortion.
So check it out. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe and share it with your friends. If you want up-to-date music news, album reviews and interviews, then check out our main website at accessnoize.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Search for the tag at XS Noize Music. Here's XS Noize writer Daniel Lynch with a taste of what's been on the website this week.
In the reviews section this week, Aaron Kavanagh has been listening to Not About to Die from punk band Wire. The album is an official release of demos recorded by the band in the 70s. Aaron says it offers interesting comparisons between the demos and the songs that would eventually make it onto the albums, but it's definitely something for the band's existing fans rather than newbies. 7 out of 10. There's new music on the site from Finnish pop-punk artist Alma, who's released Everything Beautiful, the first single from her second album. Don't Say You're in Love is the first track streaming from the Corona's upcoming 7th album, and we also have a live review of the Rolling Stones gig at Hyde Park. Finally, Rebecca Haslam has been speaking to James Bourne about his new album Sugar Beach. After rising to fame with his band Busted, he tells Rebecca about recording in the Caribbean and future plans under his own name. Read the full interview at accessnoize.com.
The Ghost of Santiago is the latest album to be released by Tim Finn and Phil Manzanera. This new album features 10 new co-written songs and is the follow-up to last year's critically acclaimed album, Caught by the Heart. In this interview, Tim Finn talks about writing and recording both albums, songwriting, his time with Split Enz and Crowded House, the new Forenzics album, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Tim Finn. Hi Tim, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thank you, Mark.
Last week, I watched Crowded House at Glastonbury, and your brother Neil Finn asked the crowd to sing Happy Birthday to you. Did you get to see it?
I got the link, yeah. I was quite touched and moved by that. It was. He also sent me a bottle of very expensive wine. So, like on the one hand, I got the bottle of wine. On the other hand, I got the crowd singing. I mean, thank you, Neil. Yeah, very appreciative.
Yeah, it must have been a very nice surprise.
It was, yeah.
Going back to the start, can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Well, it was, the first group that I fell in love with was actually the Bee Gees, closely followed by the Beatles. So when I say the Bee Gees, I mean New York mining disaster, and actually the same time as the Beatles, had their first singles out. And so between those two, I was fascinated by the melodies and the vocal stylings. But then it gradually, very quickly, the Beatles took over and became the most important influence. They arrived in New Zealand. Their music arrived at the same time as television arrived. So you can imagine the double whammy. I mean, it probably was the same in parts of North Island, I'm not sure, but they exactly coincided in New Zealand.
Yeah, and the Bee Gees' early stuff. A lot of people don't really know it because they know the Saturday Night Fever stuff, but the Bee Gees' early stuff was very, very good.
That was amazing. I mean, To Love Somebody is a beautiful, beautiful song. And I sang that song many times at school kind of functions and various events that would happen where there'd be a band, and my friends would say, they'd go up to the band and they'd go, listen, we've got, somebody who can really sing. Can you get them? And I'd get up there and I'd sing with the band, and they all knew To Love Somebody. And so that was one of my first tastes of singing to a crowd through a microphone. I was about probably 15.
It's a great song, and it's been covered many times.
Yeah.
But you formed Split Enz in the early 70s. What was the catalyst that made you decide, right, I want to be in a band and I want to be a songwriter?
Well, the catalyst was meeting Phil Judd, and he and I started Split Enz. He was going to art school, and he was a really, really good painter. You could see that straight off. He had immense talent. And so I was very impressed because I'd never met an artist before growing up. There was no one in our family who had ever done anything in that way. That was my first, kind of up close experience of being with somebody who had an innate belief in themselves as an artist. And he inspired me in that regard. And then we started writing songs together. So that was really the first thing. Yeah. Before that, at school, I'd had a couple of goes at it with a friend called Mike Chun, who became the first Split Enz bass player. And Mike was a very close friend of mine. And so we had actually had a precursor of this, but that was when it got serious, when I was about 19.
Can you remember the first song you wrote together and you thought, right, this is a really good song, we're on to something here?
Yeah, there was a double A-side single. The first Split Enz single, the A-side was, there was no A-side, a double A-side. The one side was a song called Split Enz, eponymously titled, and the other song was called For You. And we wrote those two songs in one night. And it was 1972, so 50 years ago.
But when writing songs, what's more important to you, a great lyric or a great melody?
That's a very interesting question because it depends on how easily one or the other comes to you. I mean, I'm sure for Bob Dylan, he would say a great tune because his lyrics seem to flow like a fountain, Whereas other people might say, well, I've got the tune, I've got the chords, but I just can't finish the words. So it just depends on which one comes first. For me, it's always usually anyway, the chords, the melody, and if I'm lucky and it's a good day and the sun is shining, I might get a title or a theme. Now I'm in, But the music would come first for me. Doesn't mean it's more important. I think the lyrics are actually the most important thing.
Right. And the lyrics come easily to you?
Well, they have done lately. It just comes and goes, You have a good run and then not so good for a few months. So, yeah, it's just a rhythm thing. Maybe it depends on what's brewing or what themes are kind of cooking, Well,
you're about to release The Ghost of Santiago, the follow-up to last year's critically acclaimed Caught by the Heart, your collaboration with Phil Manzanera. Caught by the Heart is a great record and it was very well received. How did that feel?
Well, it felt great. I mean, just first of all, to connect with Phil again, he produced the Split Enz album, which we called Mental Notes in the Northern Hemisphere. But because we'd already released an album called Mental Notes in Australia and New Zealand, we renamed it Second Thoughts out in that part of the world. But it was essentially our first album in the Northern Hemisphere. And Phil had seen us play. We supported Roxy Music in 1975 in Sydney. He watched from the side of the stage. We were very excited afterwards to meet him. We really liked Roxy Music. They were one of the only two or three acts that we really loved in the early 70s. I'm talking 71, 72. We loved the first two Roxy Music albums. We loved David Bowie. And there were one or two other things. But, so it was a big thrill to have Phil there. And he offered straight away to produce us, which meant, well, we're probably going to get to London, which is what we dreamed of, That's where the bands that we loved came from. Well, they certainly landed there. I mean, they were all from London. The Move, for example. I think they were a Birmingham band. But yeah, it was a very exciting meeting with Phil. And so to reconnect, not that we've had no contact in the interim 40 years, but barely at all. So yeah, to reconnect through music. And it was because of lockdown, because I said, Phil, we're stuck here in lockdown in New Zealand. Can you send me some, kind of Cuban grooves or anything you've got lying around that has a Latin flavored thing about it and is slow? And that's how we started. We kind of eased our way in.
You and Phil were both 12,000 miles apart. So how much of a challenge was it making the album remotely, or both albums, sorry?
Well, actually, I really enjoy this way of working because you work at your own pace and you send each other files. And I know a lot of people must be doing this now. There's no ego, it would be between Phil and I anyway, but yeah, it's just a very pure kind of communication. And if you don't feel like it on any particular day, you leave it for a day or so, then you do it. It takes all the pressure off, in terms of being in the studio and having to, commit to something within a 12-hour span. You can make it a 48-hour or 72-hour span. And it was just the right time for both of us, I think. So, yeah, it was actually very easy. Having said that, Mark, Mike Boddy, who produced the record for us or co-produced with us and engineered it and kind of sculpted it, without that, you'd be all at sea. You could send each other files and they might sound as rough as anything. And some people would love that. But to get it to kind of a more of a common recognition amongst people, you need it to be well produced, well mixed, etc. So, yeah, we were lucky to have that third partner.
Has writing remotely changed your approach to songwriting for good?
I don't think so. Actually, in some ways it might have, because with Phil, he was sending me music beds like chords, grooves, and that, and I would write over the top. I'd never actually done that before. I did that with Eddie Rayner, Spaden's keyboard player on the Forenzics project, where he would send me music beds, and so that is actually a new way for me to write. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the songs. My favorite song on the album is Our Love. It's a great track. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it was just, I love the piano part that Phil sent and kind of the percussion that he'd used underneath that. It just set me off, and I wanted it to be a very clear, simple message. I don't know, I guess I would be kidding myself if I mentioned Steve Winwood, but, not in the sense of my vocal, but just in the way that he would possibly write a track. I'd been thinking about Traffic a little bit and playing a bit of Traffic to myself. And so I got into that mood, and then, I am lucky enough to be living with somebody whom I love and who loves me, and God knows why. Yeah, I just wanted to say it very clearly and simply, So thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it just hit me straight away. There's lots of great tracks. Falling Asleep is beautiful. I love the backing vocals and the idea that it's about a couple having their song.
Yeah, exactly. Like we say that, that's our song, or they're playing my song. And I find that interesting, that idea of almost like ownership, Well, you say when a great singer like Aretha or somebody is singing, you say she really owned it, And it's like that owning it. Yeah. So I got into that and imagined that situation, tried to compress it into 3 minutes, that little narrative of you're a little kid, you're in the back seat, your parents are playing the radio in the car, you fall in love with a certain song, you don't even know what it's about, or it just seeps into you. And then later in life, you share that with somebody and then they leave you, and so they take it on. And yeah, it's interesting.
You sing some of the songs in Spanish across both albums. How did you approach writing those songs? Did you write them in English first and then translate, or was it difficult to sort of get them to mean and rhyme?
No, I did do that. I wrote them in English, and then I abandoned the English because, you're going to lose rhyme, you're going to lose scan, and it becomes a new thing. And I found it really interesting. And I thought, the whole idea of translation, I can see why so many writers have worked in that field, like, a classic genius writer like Samuel Beckett. He wrote Waiting for Godot in French, and I can see that freshness when you go into a foreign language, you don't speak, because I don't speak Spanish. It becomes something else, as you lay it out on the page. And then when you retranslate it back into English, you go, that's actually better. So, yeah, I thought it was a very interesting process.
And did you have someone to help you pronounce the
well,
words
Phil,
properly?
Phil. I mean, I would never have done it if I hadn't been working with Phil. I would never have embarked upon that. But knowing that he grew up in Cuba and Spanish is a second language for Phil, I felt very safe. And I would say to him, "Is that right?" And he'd correct a couple of things. So yeah, we went through it. But I think there is something to be said for that naivete and that approach. It's it worked for me anyway. I enjoyed it very much.
Which song on the album did you enjoy putting together, recording, and writing the most?
Oh, that's a tough question. I really don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, Mark. But maybe Our Love, because it just came so pure and so simple. Yeah. It
was one of the quickest songs to come.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Forenzics record, Shades and Echoes, with former Spit Ends bandmate Eddie Rayner. I thought it was a fantastic idea for a record, and it is a great record. Are you pleased how that turned out?
Very pleased, yeah. It was an idea that had been in the back of my head for like 47 years or something, because, I've told the story before, but we were in Basing Street Studios in London with Phil Manzanera producing, and he'd invited Brian Eno in because they were, ex-band mates from Roxy. I think Brian had just left Roxy, or fairly recently. So he came in to check us out, and he commented on one little section of the song "Walking Down a Road," which ended up being like a 7-minute opus. But there was one little bit that really grabbed his ears, and I think he said they should just. I don't know if he said they should, but he made some comment about that, that part being worthy of development. It stuck in my head, because he was a minimalist. He was going towards minimalism. Obviously what came after that, he was the master of minimalism, music in airports, etc. We were maximalists, we were like, the more bits you get into a song, as long as it flowed, and for us it did, the better. So, it was like a challenge, an unintended challenge. And 47 years later, I said to Eddie, Eddie Rayner, played keyboards for all those years, why don't we just take that bit and see what we can do with it? And like 48 hours later, he'd sent me through this beautiful construction. He'd taken that bit and sampled it and looped it and then put a beat with it and then put some extra bits. Yeah, it became this wonderful thing. And I remember sitting in the sauna, and I usually every day I have a sauna. We have a sauna at our place. I have to go out elsewhere to get one, but it just makes you feel so good. And I looked at all the original lyrics just in my head of Walking Down a Road, that the song that piece was taken from, and I just reassembled them in my head and sang them, and we were off. Yeah, we were away, and we wrote 16 or 18 songs within the next 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
I don't think that's been done before by a band, has it, really?
I really don't know. I actually think it may not have been done. Rock and roll has been around for 70 years. And so, if no one's done that before, well, chalk it up.
well, will you do it again? Could there be
yeah. Well, we've got a second album ready to go. Not mixed, but yeah, we definitely want to do another one. And then that might be it, or, who knows. But we don't want to push our luck, because it just seemed to be so lucky what happened between us. Yeah,
it's a great record. Again, as I say, you're a very busy man. Also in July, Needle Mythology will be reissuing a special expanded album edition of Finn, the debut Finn Brothers album.
Yes.
It's a great album. A very prolific songwriting period for you and your brother Neil. Some of the songs would end up on Woodface. What do you remember from that period?
That was 1994, I think. It was a great year. That was the same year that I did the ALT record with Andy and Liam from Ireland. So Neil and I, we felt very free, almost like escaped convicts, because he'd been in a Crowded House, as I had briefly been, but which was amazing and a brilliant band. You couldn't ask for better. But at the same time, it's always fun to escape, the contracts and the deals and the promoters and the agents and the whole rest of it. And that's how it felt to me and Neil. We just went into our own space, and we went into the studio with only half-written songs, which we don't always do. We usually go in with songs that are pretty well written. And with Chad Blake as our engineer, who's amazing, masterful kind of soundscaper. we just did something, and it was very quick. It was like 6 weeks later we had that record, and we loved it, and it seems to have endured with people. It seems to have it's got something special, I think. Because of that freedom, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and the new reissue also has an album worth of demos.
Yeah,
which is
that's
great.
right.
And one of those is Weather With You, and even listening to the demo, you can tell straight away that it's a really special song. Did you know when you wrote that, when you were writing that song, how special it was, and how did you ever have an idea? I suppose you wouldn't have an idea how successful it would be, would you?
Not really. I mean, no, you never know, but we definitely felt excited about all those songs, really. And you can hear Paul Hester there with the brushes, on the snare, and I think it was like it came in 2 stages, that song. Because the first day we wrote the first bit of it, the verse, and then the middle 8, and then the second day the chorus. And so it just kind of, it just grew and grew. And we're very excited about that one. Yeah.
Probably my favorite song is All I Ask.
The interesting thing about that one is you might have read this before, but somewhere or heard it, but it just came in one piece. So I had some lyrics about, that phrase, really, all I ask is to live each moment free from the last. And then we started playing. Neil was playing some chords, and I started singing, and we recorded it. And it's never happened before or since, but that was the song. We didn't change anything. It was a magic moment, I think, between the two of us. We both felt it deeply. And, then we were able to, with Mitchell Froome's help, create this amazing arrangement with strings. And, definitely a special one.
A second Finn Brothers album was released, Everyone Is Here. My absolute favourite song on that album is Nothing Wrong With You. What can you tell me about that song?
Well, thank you. Yeah, that also came actually in 2 stages. We had the verse, and then the next bit, and then the chorus. And I mean, the chorus was really it came from an encounter that I had. I was walking with my wife here in Auckland, and her parents come from the Philippines, and she was born in Australia. But so we were walking along through the park, and this woman yelled out, and she said, "Asian women taking over the world, eh?" And she said it with such a bitter kind of sound in her voice. And it was very hurtful, obviously, to my wife. But for me, it was because I've had very few, I've had no experience of racism. I don't even know what that feels like. But through her, I felt it. And there are many worse examples going on in the world all the time. But it was just a bitter taste. And you just thought, there was a lot of hatred there and a lot of venom. So that idea of there's something wrong with you came to me, and I suggested that to Neil, and he went, "Yep, let's do it," and sang it, And then once again, we were able to have strings play with us, and it was beautifully, by the time we got to Los Angeles and finished that track with Mitchell Froome, and I'm going to hesitate here and probably ask your help, but the drummer from Elvis Costello's band, what's his name? Elvis Costello and the Attractions, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Cut this bit out, but he played the drums, and it wasn't done to a click, so he was just like locking into our acoustics, and it came together so well.
And Tony Visconti worked on that track as well.
He did. He worked with us on the original kind of versions of some of those songs, and that was an amazing experience, to be with him, and not that we were saying, "Hey, tell us about Mark Bolan," or "Tell us about David Bowie," but you just felt that in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great song and absolutely fantastic album again. Are there plans for another Finn Brothers album down the line?
There's no actual plan, but we did say to each other a few months ago, "Let's do it," and we clinked glasses, and we thought we might make an acoustic record. And it was very, very simple, and that's the mood we were in at the time. So we'll see what happens once he gets off the road. He's out there doing it. Fair play to him. But I would love to do another one. Sure, anytime.
Great. We'll look forward to hearing it. Is there a particular subject or theme that you would like to write about, but you haven't got around to yet?
I mean, it wouldn't be prefigured like that. It would just be something that probably happened. I can't really respond to that because you just never know in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This might be a hard one for you as well. You've written so many great songs with Split Ends, solo records, crowded house collaborations, and musical theatre projects. If you were to recommend one of your albums to someone who had never heard your music before, what album would you choose to start with?
Yeah, it would depend if I wanted them to like me or not. Like if I wanted them to like me, and what they're into. Like if I knew what they liked, then I would just I would probably go a certain way. But if I didn't care and they didn't care, then I might go another way. So yeah, it depends what they're into. Like it's very hard to say. I mean, and not that I would only want to please them. I would also say, well, you should check this out because this is actually what you're asking is what's in my soul. What do I feel is the closest to who I am as a songwriter? And that's a tricky question. Maybe the next one. Well, the next one is.
When you started Split Ends in the early 70s, did you ever imagine that you would still be making music all these years later?
I mean, I didn't, it felt like a big gamble. I mean, I remember seeing interviews with the Beatles, 2 years after they'd already, they were the biggest band in the world. And they were saying, I'd probably last for a year or two, And I guess that's how you think. You never know, you're just feeling like I'm enjoying this. Not that it's all great fun. I mean, there's a lot of hard times, but it is really a very fortunate thing to be able to express yourself and have people, anybody, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000, million, whatever, some people actually liking it. That's amazing. So, no, I definitely wouldn't have thought, you're right. I mean, Split Ends started in 72. Here we are, and it's 2022, 50 years. And I'm still actually doing it. I remember when Split Ends broke up, actually, that this radio guy said to me, Tim, you'll still be earning income from these songs in 20 years' time. And that sounded ridiculous to me. And that was 1984. So 2004, I couldn't even see that far ahead. Not that it's about the money, but of course, if you're not making any money from your songs, then you probably have to get a day job, Yeah. It wouldn't have killed me.
but when Split Ends split up, did you have that fear? Like, what am I going to do next? Am I going to, be able to write songs, or am I going to have to get a day job? Did you have a fear about that?
Not really, because I'd already had a taste of success with my first solo record. So I thought I was going to be onto it. And the next record actually bombed, So it's like that, what's it called? Hubris, when you think, I can do this, no problem. Yeah, let's go for it. And then you kind of get smashed down, and then you just pick yourself up.
Looking back on all that time, what stands out? What's been your highlights of your career so far?
Been so many. I mean, there's the whole live thing. Then there's the recording thing, and then there's. I think it's really hard to say because there have been so many good gigs. I think I would say though that overall the gigs, even though you think it's here today, gone tomorrow, it's very ephemeral. You play a show, you're on to the next town. But then somebody comes up to you and says, I remember seeing you in 1975 or something, and their eyes are shining, and they go, there was a guy in Brisbane, in Australia, a couple of years back, who came up to me and he was like that, and he said, there was no band. He said, I've seen the Stones, he mentioned quite a few bands. He said, no one came on stage with as much heat and as much excitement as Split Ends. And then I was like, yeah, because I remember that thing. We always came on very, very strong. We thought it was so important to kind of get the audience immediately. Whereas other bands, other artists, they kind of build slowly and that can be amazing too. But we used to come on, boom. And so when he said that, it was like, yeah, you got it. And that's
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Just a few more questions, Tim. I always ask my guests the following questions. Out of all the albums in your collection, who do you have the most records by?
It's very eclectic, actually. I don't have a personal collection. It's more like a family collection, between my wife, Marie, and our kids, our two kids, Harper and Elliot. There's a lot of vinyl, a lot of stuff. So, they'll tell you, I don't listen to a lot of records. I guess that's why I'm always sort of jumping on to something new and doing something else. It's like that's what excites me. And I think somebody once said, and I really believe it to be true, that when you're about 14 or 15, that's the time when music will never again be as exciting for you. It'll be great, and you'll always love it. But that age is a very particular thing. It sort of happens to you. And that was very true for me with the Beatles, the Bee Gees, the Kinks, the Move, the Small Faces, those bands, all English, all amazing. And then in more recent years, my taste has expanded a lot more. We also had a lot of sing-alongs in our family prior to that, in the late 50s, early 60s, when I was 9, 10, 11, 12. Because Mum was born in Ireland, in Kilmallock, in County Limerick, she fostered in our family this thing of singing around the piano, and friends and family would come over. And actually, that was probably the most primal, the most important thing of all, for Neil and myself, was that idea that somebody's sitting in the corner with a bag in their mouth and a glass of gin on top of the piano, and they can play any song, anytime, and the whole room is singing, and there's a feeling of joy. That's really what did it for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. Some people would say there's no such thing as guilty pleasures. So what I was going to ask, do you have a guilty pleasure as a song or an album? Or if you don't believe in guilty pleasures, is there anything you listen to that people wouldn't think you'd listen to?
You're asking really tricky questions.
It's too late at night for you.
Not really. No, I don't think so. I guess some people would say, well, I love ABBA or something, but I actually don't. I don't hate them. They're okay. I'm kind of neutral about it. There's probably worse things than that people might say. But yeah, I really can't answer that one. Sorry, Mark.
Most people do say ABBA.
Not that bad, Dancing Queen, damn good song.
Yeah. So last one, Tim. What's next? What's the next project for Tim Finn?
Well, I'm doing a show in Sydney in October. I haven't played for a while, so I'm doing a live show, sort of like a best of kind of show. And then I wrote this opera, not by myself. I don't even read music, but I co-wrote this kind of operatic work that we're doing in Wellington, New Zealand in December. We're doing 2 shows. And it's about this Polynesian star navigator called Tupaia, who went on the Endeavour with Cook in his first voyage around the Pacific. They picked up this guy in Tahiti, Tupaia, and it just fascinated me, that idea of the 2 navigators, Tupaia, who could just read the stars, didn't need any instruments, he could stand there naked and just read where he was going or where he'd come from, and Cook, who had his compass and his almanac and his sextant, and the 2 worlds, it just fascinated me, like, where are we going? Who's going to tell us where to go? The guy with the compass or the guy who can read the stars? So yeah, I wrote a work with some other people about that, and that'll do till Christmas.
And do you think that will be touring worldwide, or will it just be in Australia for the moment?
I doubt it. Yeah, it's an esoteric work that will probably just be part of this part of the world. But I would like, these things are very hard. I mean, it took 7 years of kind of writing and co-writing and workshopping just to get it on a few times. So it's very tough. And the expense of traveling a show like that would just be prohibitive. Mm-hmm. But if anybody wants to buy a cheap ticket out to NZ December.
Brilliant. Well, Tim, thanks very much. It's a great pleasure talking to you. I'm sorry for asking you awkward questions.
I liked your questions, and it's nice to chat.
So hopefully we'll see you over in Ireland at some stage playing live.
There might be a chance, because me and Andy got this record coming out in January, and we're trying to get a show together in Dublin, and maybe we're pitching for the Latitude Festival as well in the UK. So it is possible. That wouldn't be till, say, June, July next year. But yeah, it's very possible. And if we do a show, we'll play some split-in songs and play some, we'll mix it up.
Okay.
So, yeah. Thanks a lot, Mark.
All right, Tim. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Nice talking.
Nice talking to you as well, mate. Bye-bye.
See ya.